Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm ready to go
Okay,
whenever you
cool.
are. Yeah.
Sounds great. Blaine, wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Yeah, you as well.
So, I want to begin our conversation with a question I always ask in the beginning. 5 years ago, this pandemic was jolting everybody, changing the world. How did you get through that coronavirus era, and how has it changed the way that you do things in 2025?
Well, strangely for us, when that hit, our business was already fully remote, and so it was one of the strangest things was everyone sort of caught up to us, and it made it a lot easier to get meetings and a lot easier to meet with people, and so on one side, it sort of validated our business model, and it sort of kicked off as just another day. We're already on Slack, we're already on Zoom, or we already had all these systems in place. Um, but there was also this strange level of instability and a lot of unknowns, and so it brought a whole new set of challenges when you're dealing with people, especially in business, because it was all different for everybody. So it was still very unsettling, of course.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do, where you were as kind of a trendsetter. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids, 12-year-old kids. It's career day. You're in a school, and the kid in the back of the room wants to know what you do for a living. How do you answer him?
Sure. Well, we make software that helps businesses understand when the money comes and goes from their business, which sounds fairly straightforward. The problem is when you run a business, a lot of people owe you money and they're going to pay later, and you owe a lot of people money and you're going to pay later, and the later differs a lot. And so one of the main things we help is with businesses trying to figure out the timing of when the money comes in and when the money is going to go out, so they don't have a misstep and actually run short of money. So that's probably in the simplest terms what we do with our software.
So, what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream gig?
You know, I, I I don't know if there was there. I had interests. I don't know if I had something I really wanted to be at that time. Art was a big interest, and I love to build things, and I love to design things and make things, and I just was always building something. And I think that sort of passion led to, in a way, where I am today. So when I was graduating high school and I was deciding what to do, what's the next step? Like, what do you do? And I discovered, hey, you could actually design things for a living. And so, I went to school to become a designer, and I studied both industrial design and graphic design. Loved industrial design, but it was a lot more challenging to earn a living that way, I guess. And so I gravitated towards graphic design and ended up getting a master's degree as well in design. Um, but it didn't take very long for me to it used that as a little bit of a gateway or a portal to start a business. And I've basically been a business owner and entrepreneur since then. And so I love design. I have a passion for design. I don't really do it anymore. Very, very little. It's, you become an entrepreneur and work with a lot of really talented people. So.
So, where did these seeds, these foundational elements come from early on in your life? I mean, a lot of our personality is developed by the time we're 3 years old. What was it about your childhood that eventually led to design and entrepreneurship and these leadership levels?
Yeah, I think some of it must be hardwired. My dad loves to make and build things, and just in his spare time, and he's always inventing a little some just fun little things, right? And I think there's some sort of thread through there. I don't necessarily think it's learned. I think there's something there's a little nugget in there that just I just like to build stuff. And I had a my advisor during my master's degree, but he said that to me one day when he said, you don't want to go for a PhD. You like to build things. And he could just observe that from the outside. And I'm like, hey, you're right. I just like to build stuff, right? I like to invent things and solve problems. And even my before I started Dryrun, I had a design firm for about a decade, and even the types of projects and the types of clients we got there, we were doing a lot of inventing and figuring things out and building things so it was that just came natural to me. A lot of problem solving, especially in sort of that technology space, I guess. And eventually it sort of led to, I guess, where I am now.
I just listened to the biography on Bill Gates in the very early years of how they were tinkering and getting into it. And it was that mindset. Like you were like, I can build things and make money. And that was kind of what he was doing with Paul Allen and all those guys. They were like, it was a hobby, but it turned into a bigger thing. And my question to you is this: when you look at the pantheon of software, of all of these developers, of what has become mainstream, but when we were kids, it was just a novelty. What's your favorite
Mhm.
software? Or who was your favorite person that did it?
I don't know, a favorite software, man. We've used just so many. We use so many now. It's hard to kind of pull that together. I think early on, when Steve Jobs came back to, and I know it's an obvious answer, but when Steve Jobs came back to Apple and released the new, at the time, the new iMacs, it was a blue and white box that was all rounded and looked so different. And that was early in sort of my design career, and uh, just the way that it changed the respect and the value of design, that suddenly design mattered, design and how the item not only looked, but how it functioned and how people would interact with it and how the software and the hardware all started to work together. And I'm not sure they're as good as it today as they used to be. And but at that time, it was quite a novelty to put so much effort into the user experience from a hardware perspective all the way through to the software perspective and marry all of that together and really make it work. I found that really interesting, and there was a lot of groundbreaking at that time that um, it kind of affected the rest of the world, and it's changed a lot today, but at the time it was quite different.
So, who's been your inspirational force? Who's been your hero that's allowed you to evolve in your life as an entrepreneur and throughout your journey to find your place right now?
Well, I think I wouldn't be able to name sort of just one, but I think the biggest impact on me over the last 20 years, especially kind of over the last 10 years, are other entrepreneurs. There's just a community and a kinship and this shared struggle that is so difficult for not only business owners but especially um, ones that are taking on some of the really high risk and difficult challenges in startup land, especially in kind of tech startup land. Um, Being able to sit down with other entrepreneurs and just have somebody that's on the same page, has gone through the same struggles, is going through the same struggles. Like a friend of mine, I'm actually meeting with him later today, and I remember he walked onto my deck maybe a year or so ago. It was, post pandemic sort of stuff, and we would chat all the time. And he walked up onto my deck carrying, a 6 pack of beer, and he said, "Are you talking me off the ledge, or am I talking you?" And it's a little bit of both, and that's I just have so much respect for other people that are trying to solve the world's problems, and it's the hardest battle. It's so difficult, and that's where I'm um, find a lot of encouragement and support. It's from other entrepreneurs that are going through the same battle.
So, speaking of being an entrepreneur, it requires risk. You got to embrace the failures to evolve as an organism. What's the biggest risk that you've taken in your career arc?
Well, starting dry run was the biggest risk by far. I didn't know how much of a risk it was when I started dry run. A lot of just like a lot of other entrepreneurs, I saw a problem. And the problem was a big one for me. Like, I was running my creative agency in 2008 when the bottom fell out of the economy, and suddenly we went from kind of world domination plan sort of thing to suddenly, how am I going to make payroll? And the reality hits you so hard and so quickly that that had a major impact on me. And so to be able to look forward and say, okay, I want to try and solve this problem for other people that are in business, other business owners, other entrepreneurs. Um, I just went in to solve a problem. And man, I'm several years in before you start to realize, holy cow, there's a less than 10% chance you're successful at this. And the businesses rarely survive. And you have so many setbacks and so many failures along the way while you learn and somehow just managed to, for us, we just were one of the few so far that's kind of scraped by, learned from it, and been able to change and evolve and adapt. And we've had to do a couple of pivots, one major pivot, and that's an enormous risk. You're betting the company on it. But for me at the time, uh, it wasn't betting the company on it. It was, we're not going in the right direction. This isn't going to work. Yeah, we're betting the company on it, but it's either this works because the other way wasn't going to. And so we did, and it seems to have been validated now that we had to make that big of a shift and that much pain. Um, there's just sort of no way around it. You have to learn and you have to evolve and you have to change quickly. Guess there's no other answer, right?
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're going to meet with your friend today who's an entrepreneur. If you could meet any entrepreneur on the planet right now that you find fascinating, someone that you could lunch with, that you might learn from to advance where you're going, who would you love to meet and pick their brain?
Oh boy, that's a tough question. I think to me, like I'll flip it a little bit on its head. I suppose, less interest in meeting the billionaires that have kind of made it already, and it feels like the startup life was so far in the rear view mirror for them, and they got a lot of luck and they grew. Um, to me, I think more interested in meeting with entrepreneurs that are um, really successful and a little bit ahead of me, but not up in the stratosphere, right? And so you have that you're still fighting the same sort of fight, you're still battling the same battle, and so like even as we see um, uh, some of the entrepreneurs that have built some of the businesses that we actually work with, some of the partner businesses, some of they're just probably a few years ahead of us and understand the battle and that. Um, so I don't have the answer of, oh, sure, I would like to meet Tim Cook, who I don't even I think he's a career CEO, so it's not even the right answer. But I'm saying like I don't have that. I want to go for a beer with somebody that invented and like some Google. No, it's the people that feel like they're fighting the fight, the same one that I am. That's those are the people that I find the most interesting.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight and you ran into a 14, 15-year-old version of you and you walked up at your age now and had like a coffee table book and it was your life and you handed it over and said, that's how it all turned out. Would that version of you believe it?
Oh no, no, not at all. Uh, when I graduated university, it was just like it was still just got to get a job and I'll have a job and it'll be, at that time, looking at the environment then and my dad, and then you're like, oh, you know what? I guess I'll get a job and I'll work somewhere for 25 years or 30 years. Had a job. I'm a designer. I guess I'll be a designer. But I already had these entrepreneurial tendencies that I didn't quite recognize, and it felt like a bit of autopilot. I'm only a couple of years in, and I'm like, no, I'm already planning to how do I do this on my own? I have bigger aspirations. I want to build instead of a thing. I want to build a business. I don't really even know where that came from, but um, that would have sounded probably really foreign to me at that age. And then to be in software. I wasn't a programmer. I was a designer, right? That's not that, wasn't a developer. And so it just I don't even think it would make sense.
So let's say you walk into a room of everybody that's known you in a business sense throughout your career, clients, colleagues, employees. You walk up to a podium and you can tell them one fun story. Maybe the first concert you went to, jumping out of an airplane, a wonderful place you traveled to, outrunning a bear, some kind of story that might humanize you to that room. What would be a fun story you could tell that room?
Uh, uh, that's the kind of came out of left field here a little bit. And it's so many, so many of the conversations I have are around business, right? So you're constantly talking business. But you did hit me with the bear because as soon as you said that, I remember this was probably going on 15 years ago at least, and I was mountain biking with a friend between Jasper and Banff. I don't know if you've probably heard of those two places. We
Yeah.
were in the Rockies and we were down along the Athabasca River in kind of the middle of nowhere, and we were pedaling along, and I looked up and I saw some sort of lightish color motion in front and off to the left in the trees, and my first thought was elk. And but I looked back down because it was really kind of rocky and bumpy where we were at. And if it had been black, I would have thought bear, and I would have been kind of freaked out.
Yeah.
Problem was there is one bear that's kind of brown. That's a grizzly bear. And I heard this loud just crashing, and I looked up, and there was a grizzly bear ran right in front, full bore, right in front of my friend on his bike,
Oh no.
and just like a steamroller went right through the bushes, through the trees, through everything. And so I start yelling, and we stop, and it was the most ridiculous thing. We had bells on our bike, and we sat there together, and we're looking around, and we're just bing, 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 and we're ringing this bell like that's somehow gonna, I don't know, scare a bear away. And so after about 10 minutes, the heart rate starts coming down, and we kind of, the bear went off to the right. And so we're like, well, let's keep going. And so we start riding, and the trail starts turning towards where the bear went.
Oh no.
And we went, trips over. And we went back to the truck, threw the bikes in the back, went to a little town called Edson and sat in the bar and had a beer. And that was the end of the bike
That's
trip.
Yeah, you need a drink after that. That's a great story. I always
Yeah.
throw that moniker out just to be kind of funny, but I never thought that someone would be like, "All right, I got a bear story for you." I'm so glad that I said that and hedged that
Yeah.
out. That's wonderful. So, of everything that you've done and accomplished as a human, as an entrepreneur, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
You know, I think there's a lot. It's gratifying when you talk with customers where you've made a difference for them, where they've used us for years, and in a lot of sense, what I really am proud of is that I don't feel like we're a nice to have. We've helped them survive. We've helped them grow. We've helped them make decisions that, half the businesses are out of business by their fifth year, 30% in their first year, right? We help businesses survive. We help businesses keep people employed and make better decisions, which goes all the way through the rest of the business. And so, I think that we take a lot of satisfaction in helping businesses run. But even on my side, just even having a startup and as much of a struggle as it's been, I can also look back and think there's a lot of really interesting experiences for my team, and they all got paid every single time on, like we helped them, as well, pay mortgages and grow and everything as well. And I think our business has had it's been a really interesting place to work, with a lot of challenges and a lot of satisfaction. And I don't think people come to work for us and just kind of put in their hours and go home as much as it's interesting. And there's a lot of satisfaction in it.
So, Blaine, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you: family, friends, clients, all of your employees, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, I think I've recognized over the years that I'm quite driven and I don't have a lot of give up, which just sort of kept me going. Um, and but there's always when you're doing something like this, there's always a little bit of that what's the term where imposter syndrome. Like,
Yeah.
how on earth did I get to this point building this thing and somehow surviving? And there's a perception that I've stumbled along somehow making it through this and other people have it all together. But like I said, you talk with other entrepreneurs and you find out, no, it's you're inventing and you're learning. And it's like the founder of LinkedIn, I think, was the one that said, I'm sort of paraphrasing, but he said, you jump off the cliff and you build the airplane on the way down.
Yeah.
And it's that's a lot of days how it feels. And you're making decisions with, data as much as you can, with, information, with customer feedback, and a whole lot of gut. And hoping to make the right decisions along the way. And of course, a lot of them are the wrong decisions. A lot of them are, like there's so many failures along the way. Makes sense at the time, but it's somehow continuing to move forward and press forward. Um, it's I think the one thing that's kept us alive is just driving, probably too stupid to quit at times.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to dive into Dryrun, they have any questions, demos, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, just come visit us at dryrun.com if you're working on your cash flow in a spreadsheet, especially if you're a CFO or on a finance team. The more complicated it is, the more we can actually help. So we scale up well. So if you, especially are a CFO, come and talk with us. We're going to help you save a lot of time and present something to management they understand.
Wonderful. I will put all these links in the show notes. Blaine, wonderful to meet you. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. This might be the first and only bear story, so it's been wonderful. I love it.
Thanks so much, Joe. I really appreciate it.
You bet.